Can you hear yourself through that mic?
Yeah, but I'm now trying to figure out how to get this boom mic to come go in front of my face. It's a new mic.
So that makes me think that there's something on your. Oh, I don't know.
Because now what I'm doing is I'm going through the. I can just hold the mic, can't I?
You
That's
can.
that's a casual way of doing it.
Yeah, you might have to crank yourself up a bit though. I don't know how to. I
Am I
don't know
really?
how.
I'm really quiet, am I?
Yeah,
And there's a huge rumble as well. Which I don't know what is that louder?
yeah, that's good. That.
There is a huge rumble. Actually, you speak.
Hello.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah,
Yeah, you
I mean
sound
for
quite.
me,
Yeah, you sound all right.
okay, good. And
Well, I
I've
think.
now got that sort of radio voice thing. That's what you like to hear because when you use headphones on, it kind of sounds quite cool in your ears. You know?
Yeah, there's a little. I don't know. I don't know whether you've got a slight loose connection on the cable though as well, because just you
Is it cutting out slightly or something?
slightly.
Cutting out
No, you
slightly.
sound all right. No, you do sound all
Okay.
right. Should we give it a go?
Yeah, let's give it a go.
Yeah, because the last thing you want is a member of Swervedriver to be quiet. That's that's
Exactly.
that's
There you
not what
go.
that's not why I listen to
Yeah, yeah.
Swervedriver.
That's not why you signed on for this whole thing.
Although you are getting dangerously mellow, I
Mhm.
feel like in your senior years. Is that how it feels to you?
No, I think we were dangerously sort of aggressive in our earlier years, and we've sort of probably reverted a little bit to type.
It-
Um,
oh, so it's a bit more about kind of finding some equilibrium.
Something like that. I mean, you're talking about loud and quiet as well, but we used to talk about this with when I was playing with Sophia, that sometimes there are really quiet parts of the set and there are really loud parts, and that the quiet and loud meet around the back, sort of like the Bering Straits, you know. Because I mean, there's like bands like Low as well and Mogwai, we have incredibly loud sections and then quiet sections.
So what do you want to do first? Do you want to talk about the reissue, or do you want to talk about the Bolts of Melody stuff?
The reissue is good. Good place to start.
Oh, I was kind of hoping you were going to say the other way
Oh,
around.
okay. We'll do it. No, the other way around is
No,
perfect. Yeah.
I like to, I'm an affable guy, I like to, but I was just, that's the, I thought you would say Bolsa Melody because I just thought you would be, I sort of
More
imagined
into
you would be
pushing
very,
that.
I just imagined you would be excited, like maybe more excited by looking forward than looking back.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, in the end, it was like these two records weren't supposed to come out on the same day, but then it was suggested because they were both sort of coming to fruition at the same time. It's kind of like, oh, actually, that's a really good idea. Why not? Really, you know.
Who
Um,
who suggested that? It seems like a terrible idea to me.
the record label. Oh,
Oh
you
yeah,
think it's a terrible idea because it's halving the kind of the press coverage? Because apparently there have been some people saying, "Oh, we can't review both."
well, I guess it's just that thing of is there room? I was thinking today. I was listening to some Swerve Driver, and I listen to Swerve Driver fairly regularly. But I was listening to some records that I probably didn't spend as much time with as the records when I was younger. And I was just thinking these records are fucking brilliant, and I should have spent more time with them. And then I got thinking about just how much music there is. At the moment, I'm
Mm,
doing an episode of the podcast like every day, basically
right.
in the run up to Christmas, and I was just like, "There's just not the hours. There's just not the
Mm,
hours to listen to all the music that I want to listen to," which is, obviously a first
yes.
world problem and
Yeah.
a nice one to have. But just kind of like putting two of your releases on the same day
Yeah, I suppose so.
seems
Yeah.
stressful.
Now you've pointed out the folly of it. Yeah.
I don't
I have
want.
a,
I don't. I don't
I
want to
have
dish your label, by the way, but I'm not. I'm not calling them fools. I'm sure they know what they're doing.
I have a friend who does film reviews and for one of the Sundays, and I wonder how I mean, she must have to watch kind of 8 movies a week or something, which and you do wonder about hours in the day and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's just bonkers, man. It's like when I was at the NME. I mean, I've heard you be quite critical of the music press before, and it's fine because I can be very critical of the music press as well. But when I was at the NME and sort of the internet really kind of changed the method of music being released, like say
Yeah.
Radiohead would drop an album out of nowhere, and it would be like, how quick can we get the review? And you were like, I'm sure that's not what Tom York was thinking about when he wrote these
Hmm.
songs. I'm
Yeah.
sure he wasn't thinking, how quick can we turn this around? And it is like, I don't know, the world just moves so fast now, and I don't know how, I don't know how good that is for the art.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does, but I think still the actual release that when it finally comes out sort of moves at a kind of glacial pace, because then the album's out there and then people gradually over time pick up on it and stuff. And and then that kind of lasts you for a long stretch of time. But of course, yeah, from the point of view of the magazines and stuff, and it's like they've got a review, and there's so much crap out there now, and a lot more than there was back when when this Swervedriver album, for example, was released originally, there weren't half as many. Well, probably, maybe less than a quarter of, if that makes sense. Like is exponentially probably because everyone can release stuff now, and which is great, and you can get stuff up on Spotify, and you've got worldwide distribution in theory.
Yeah, it's not better though, is it?
Well, I mean, now you can actually listen to stuff. That's the weird thing. Back in the day, you'd read a review in the music papers, and then if it was written in a certain way and appealed in a certain way, you thought, oh, I think I might check this band out. This sounds great. And then you actually check it out, and you didn't like it at all. It was just the writing or something.
Yeah, that is interesting actually, because I'm 43, and I feel like I came to Swervedriver quite late. I'm not going to lie and say I was listening to you like the first time
Yeah, well,
around.
you would have been a young man, a very young man when it first came out. 15 years younger than me. Yeah, so that's
Yeah, but in fairness though, I was sort of
you were
like
hip.
that. Well, that era, I don't know about hip really. My music taste was very much dictated by what I thought of music that the music press told me, but also what records came into my local library that I
Yeah.
could
All
borrow
right.
and
Yeah, yeah.
tape.
Mm.
Home tapings killing music and all that. I mean,
Absolutely. Well,
I did my best to kill music for a time, and
I think we all did
but
with tapes.
but the reason I say this is to say that I was listening to a lot of music by your peers. I was mad on Ride, for example, but I was hugely into Sonic Youth, and so I've got no excuse really. But I think that
Mm.
the music press kind of dictated what I thought Swervedriver were for a long time.
Mm.
And then actually, when I got older and almost sort of deprogrammed a little bit from that way of thinking about music, I was like, these songs are really good. And like the shoegaze thing is just such a fucking ridiculous name to apply to what you do. But I didn't think that when I was younger because the music press was just telling me really, and I sort of went
Mm.
along with it kind of
But
blindly.
yeah, that's the thing. I mean, now I think, kids can hear your music or whatever. I mean, a 16-year-old in California or something hears a song because they Shazam it and then they love it and they don't really care what it's about or who it's, but they just like the music. So in that respect, I think it's a lot better because I agree with what you say. It's kind of like you probably did get dictated as to you know, what you were supposed to think Swervedriver were or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's that clinics song. I think IPC sub-editors dictate our youth, and I didn't really get
Oh,
it.
right.
And also having worked for the music press, the sub-editors don't dictate, what.
Right. Yeah.
But it's sort of a misunderstood way that understanding of the way music magazines are structured. But the point remains. Anyway, so well, I guess let's start with 99th Dream. So you were saying that the label suggested releasing it the same day as the new project, but why? I mean, it's been quite hard to get. Well, for a period of time, I was begging. I don't know who I was begging, but I was begging someone or something for Swervedriver reissues. Why is this record getting reissued now?
Well, because at the start of the year, I mean, the reels of tape are in the room below me, and at the start of the year, I was looking at all these reels of tape in boxes, scratching my head, thinking, okay, how do we even start with this? Because there's a whole bunch of like the actual original album, plus a whole bunch of other stuff. There's also Mescal Head demos, and it was kind of like, well, there's the whole album, so you could actually, I mean, for one thing, I didn't like about the original album really was the singing mostly. So of course I'm thinking, well, so we could go in and remix it all. But then we were sort of thinking about, well, nobody wants a remix, you know. Iggy does a remix of Raw Power, and everybody prefers the original anyway, or whatever.
Yeah.
So from that point onwards, it was like, well, I knew that there was a whole bunch of outtakes, some really cool outtakes, and there's also this live show. So this thing would have been a two CD thing, I think, except for the fact that we're still searching. We've got these Mescal Head demos, and I can't locate Dual, and you can't really have a Mescal Head thing without Dual being
Right.
part of it, and
Right.
so there was this further tapes that were kind of unmarked or marked with certain things. One of them had Jules' working title, but when we got it baked, because you know you have to get tapes baked now, it's the whole thing with the music industry.
What's that?
Well, it's literally putting the tapes into an oven because the tapes have all this oxide on them, and when they get played and they're 30 years old or whatever, the oxide falls off. It looks very pretty, actually. We filmed it
Right.
because Tim put it through his machine, and then you could actually see we were playing. It was actually a shaker pill recording, but you could see these flecks coming off it. So you take it to somebody who knows how to bake it,
Right.
which isn't that complicated. I think it's a certain heat, and then when I guess it kind of sticks the oxide back against the tape, and then you kind of got one shot. But you've got more than one shot probably, but you want to get it digitized straight away, and then so you play it one time through, and then it goes through and it's digitized. But then this whole thing was hampered by the fact that the first time we did it, the machine was playing at slightly the wrong speed, which we found out later on when we tried to put it to concert pitch.
Right. Right. Right.
And then later on, a piece broke on this old machine, and parts had to be delivered from Eastern Europe or whatever. So anyway, we had all these tapes, and I'm searching for Jewel, and I was like, I gave them one particular tape. And I thought, I think that's going to be it. And then it came back, and I listened to the first track, and it was all weirdly mixed because it's not mixed. I was like, oh, it's not Jewel. I was really pissed off. But then I thought, actually, what is this though? And it turned out to be sort of 10 or 12 kind of demos for 99's Dream, and we'd just gone into like it's recorded on 8-track, four mics on the kit, one on each of the guitars. There was a ghost of a vocal like I was singing in the room, but you couldn't actually hear it properly. And then suddenly this, oh my God, this is actually quite a bit of a gold mine, really. And it's a bit like, Detectorists, the TV show when they're
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
around. And so there's a whole bunch of these recordings that kind of got I would say, a kind of Peel session kind of energy because I mean, one thing is that the arrangements are different. I mean, I remember when like Echo and the Bunnymen would do a Peel session or whatever, and you'd hear it after the album came out, and it's a different arrangement, because they were still working it out. So this is a bit like that. It's a lot rawer, and yeah, so that's ended up being there's a third CD of outtakes, which is kind of the tits on the whole set, really. As far as I'm concerned.
Did you say the tits?
The tits, yeah. TITZ. I think that's the official
Oh, I thought
spelling
you
for
would be. I thought you were being vulgar.
it.
You,
Woe
you,
betide.
you know what? I've been doing this for such a long time, and you've used two. You've used two insider terms I've never heard before:
What, baking?
baking and tits.
There you go.
It's been quite the
Yeah,
education, Adam.
yeah,
Uh,
learn something every day.
there's a live set on here as well, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a live set from Mercury Lounge, January of 1998, and I think it must have been the first time we played a lot of these songs live because we never used to be a band that kind of road tested stuff. We kind of record it and then go out and play it really. And I think this was the first show, and it's a recording from the room. And we found out who recorded it, and he's credited, and the whole thing's been sort of remastered and jigged around, and it sounds really great, actually. Yeah, that's kind
You,
of fun.
you were saying how you weren't happy with your vocals originally on
Mm.
this record. I mean, I've never heard you. I mean, I think your voice is. I think you're the perfect singer for Swervedriver, right? But I've never heard you be particularly.
That's a backhanded compliment, isn't
No, I thought it was very good actually. I
it?
thought Marky Smith was the perfect singer for The Fall,
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a
But
compliment. Well,
Kevin Shields was the perfect vocalist for My Bloody Valentine. I could go on,
mm.
but what? I've never heard you be. I've never heard you be like the biggest cheerleader for your own singing. Like I've heard you say before that when you became the singer, you weren't particularly happy about that. So what is it? What was it about your vocals originally that you were especially not happy about?
Well, I mean, on this album, which is, I mean, I think I'd done some good vocals in between. The first recordings, I didn't really know how to sing. Plus, I was encouraged to kind of sing out more, which is fair enough, by the recording engineer, Jessica. And she said, "You got to sing out more," or whatever. And I kind of did. And I didn't like the fact that I sang out more. And then later on, there's this technique, where you kind of sing, you really sing, loudly the main vocal, the vocal line, the melody, and then do it sort of whisper it a second time, and then you kind of blend them together, which is quite a nice effect. But the thing on this album was, I think I was trying to do a Arthur Lee actually, and on one song, and then there's another song that's kind of like a Lars tribute kind of thing,
All right.
but the vocal doesn't sound anything like Lee Mathers, and I didn't like the vocal on that song either. But I'm really happy because both of those songs that I mentioned are on the kind of rehearsal sessions, the Peel thing or whatever. So yeah, so they sound a lot better on there because I had to redo the vocal because there wasn't a vocal on those.
So I don't know anything. I don't know anything about the band Medicine. I don't know anything about Beth Thompson.
Oh yeah.
Educate me.
Um, Medicine. We first met Brad Lehner, who's the guitar player, when we went. Me and Jimmy were in LA for the first time, and a friend of ours, Rod Poole, who was a very improvisational acoustic guitar player. We went to his house, and it turned out his friend was there, and it's this guy Brad. And then 2 years later, Creation signed or licensed the Medicine album. I forget the name of that now. I imagine they were licensed to Creation, and then we toured with them in 1994. So we did a tour in '94, opening for Smashing Pumpkins, and then the second tour was us with Medicine going on before us. And Medicine's great, yeah. You've got to listen to
What's the record I need to hear?
well, the first two are great, but I can't remember the name. The Sheltered Life, is it? Maybe you can
Right.
Google it.
Yeah.
I mean, they've done albums in recent years, but it's a bit of a different personnel.
You,
But yeah,
you
the great thing about Medicine, Brad Lehner on stage, he actually had a 4-track Porter studio. He had his pedals on the floor, and in front of the pedals was a 4-track, like a Fostex or whatever it might have been. And it's like, man,
what to like record
I've
their live sets?
no, not to record it. And I saw it, and I suspected I knew, and I said, "Is that because of the sound?" He said, "Yeah, he loved the compression you used to get when recording demos through a 4-track or whatever, like a Porter studio, as it
Oh
used to
right,
be
right,
called."
right.
And I agree because there was a certain compression, but the fact that he'd actually, instead of kind of getting the compressor pedal to sort of get it, he just wanted to get that sound. So that was on the stage at his feet, which I thought was fantastic.
This is it. You see, I mean, I'll snip the beginning where we couldn't get headphones going, but I feel like this is the, and we were having a bit of a grumble about technology. This is the problem. You see, is that I feel like all of that love and experimentation is getting edged
Mm,
out
yeah.
by, and lots of, I mean, I make music and I make it completely without picking up an instrument, which is mind blowing to me, and
Mm.
I am probably part of the problem. But it is that how you see it?
Kind of. I mean, there's a new pedal I just got, which is amazing, actually, called the Microcosm. It's sitting just there, which does incredible things, and it's the most money I've ever spent on a pedal. But it's different from like those things you get on, you're watching a YouTube thing, and suddenly bang, an advert comes in halfway through, and it's somebody trying to sell you some sort of chord pack or something. Hey, you want to play keyboards? Get a chord pack. It's got all the chords in the world. And it's like, what the fuck? Why don't you just fucking learn the chords in the first place?
Yeah,
And you won't need that technology. I think it's, yeah. What are we talking about? We're talking about medicine, weren't we? I was thinking about the 4-track and yeah, I
yeah.
mean, you had to work harder. What I was going to say actually was, the shoegazer pedal finally came out, and Andy Ross, God bless him, Andy, right, who ran Food Records.
Food, yeah.
And I sent him a message and said, "This is your fault," because he was the man that coined the phrase from the Moose gig at Bull and Gate or something, and he was reviewing it for the Sounds or something. and mentioned shoegazing. And then finally, all these years, like there's a shoegaze pedal, magically press on it and it will make all your dreams come true. But the experimentation in terms of pedals is kind of similar to record shops, I suppose, in a way. Maybe a bit hit and miss.
Explain that to me. That's flown
Oh,
over my head.
sorry. No, I was thinking. Well, it's just that you were saying, things aren't necessarily better now. You were saying it was good fun back then because you had to search things out from your local record store,
Oh,
and
I
in
understand.
in a
Yeah.
similar way, you were searching out guitar sounds because it's like, oh, I want to make it sound like, but I don't know what I want it to make it sound like. But now you can always get a pedal that's like, hey, this pedal makes it sound like blah blah blah. But of course, it doesn't because if you can't do something with it.
Well, I think that sort of ties in a little bit what we were saying about uh, almost about sort of that ability to discover things is so much easier now, but I'm not sure that's worth the trade off. I don't want to be
Mm,
too kind of like doom and gloom, but I think music remains as majestic as it's ever been. Music is, remains, at least to me, like the most important thing in the world. But I do think that I miss simple things like musicians being able to make a living, and I think that the more music that there is, and the more music discovery, and I can't believe I would ever say this. I mean, I preferred those days when I taped things from the local library
mm,
because music had more permanence for me, and
yeah,
I felt like it shaped the culture more. So, it's like I don't want to
yeah.
be too kind of like "Ugh, I'm an old guy, but it was better.
Well, it's like cassettes. You mentioned cassettes and how they're, killing. What is it? Home taping is killing music. But there are certain albums that I only have had on cassette, like "The Raven" by the Stranglers, one of my most favorite albums, or whatever. But for a long time, it was just on a cassette, and I think the last track kind of cut off or something, and I just got used to that.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
even 7-inch singles where sometimes they jump and you'd remember. I mean, songs from when I was very young. I remember, sometimes it would jump and then you get used to hearing that jump, and then years later you hear it without the jump. So that's not right.
Yeah, I mean, you just keep going and going and going, though. So music must still matter to you as much as it ever did.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it takes on different sort of roles in a way. Um,
What do you mean
but,
by that?
well, I mean, I suppose as a musician, it takes on different roles because you're not always trying to come up with something for the marketplace or whatever. You might just be doing something just for your own enjoyment or playing something to somebody else. I don't know. But um,
I should probably say that the reason why I brought up medicine is because Beth Thompson is on. I mean,
mm,
I've just said that like I
yes,
know who she is. You just educated me on medicine. I had no idea that she's on one of these songs
that's right.
on the outtakes. Why did those? I mean, when you listen to them, can you remember why those songs didn't make the cut on the finished record?
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think in many cases it's really shit vocal.
Right.
At least on some of the ones that were recorded on sort of 8-track for the album, um, and also sort of like jumping into an unknown territory a little bit because one of the songs has got a kind of spoken word vocal. And I remember at the time trying to do that in the studio, and it's just rubbish. And there's because you couldn't really. I mean, I guess I had done a 4-track, Port Studio demo of it, but not really in the studio. Whereas, of course, now you can go in and you can sort of hone it by yourself without any fellow band members coming in going, "Hey," whatever.
Right. Right.
And yeah, and then Beth did a vocal on this song, and that song, uh, well, actually, the version, yeah, I think she only ever did the vocal on the sort of the original demo, but then I discovered this version of that song was in this rehearsals thing. So we managed to get the two vocals, hers and my vocals, into this new place and then mixed it, and it sounds like a new thing. And that's what I like about it. I think this album, the outtakes record, actually does have a kind of flow of a a new album rather than just being a bunch of songs chucked together, which it clearly is.
What was the? I mean, people sort of. I've heard Swervedriver fans talk about this record as being almost like the nearly lost record. Like, what do you remember? Like, was the band not in great shape at the time, or was it just that it felt like the music industry was doing everything it could to kill you?
Yeah, a bit of both, really. Definitely. I mean, this album was started. Well, we started this album originally on our own after the third album, the third Swervedriver record. Um, Before it was finished, A&M dropped us because they couldn't afford to give us. It wasn't in their interest to give us the big advance for the next record or whatever, and therefore, Creation, who were getting sort of like 75% of the money we got from A&M anyway, they kind of thought, we can't really afford them either. So I think they dropped us. Was it the day of release or a week later or something? But then Jodie Carilla, who's this wonderful woman who worked for Geffen Records, she stepped in and said, "Well, if nobody wants them, I'm going to sign them." So it's like, okay, do you want to sign to Geffen? And
Yeah.
then Geffen tried to get the Ejector Seat Reservation album off of. Hang on, who was it? Oh, it was A&M, of course. Yeah, who had dropped us. The mistake they made, I think, is that instead of going in and saying, "Hi, this is Geffen, we want to buy this album," they should have gone in and said, "Hi, this is Dogshit Records, we want to buy this album," and
Right.
trick them into it, because A&M had just recently had the similar thing with who was the band now? Dave Perner.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Soul Asylum, yeah, Soul
Yeah.
Asylum, who had recorded an album, I think for A&M. A&M had let them go, and then they let the album go, and then that was their big seller. So they didn't really allow Geffen to sign this record. And so Jody said, "Well, have you got any new songs?" And we're like, "Yeah, well, yeah, we've been recording stuff, so we just got to work on this album." But then, of course, by the time the album was finished, Jody had been fired. I don't know why. It was some sort of thing. I guess they were,
These things
well,
happen.
yeah. And so somebody was sent over from Geffen to oversee the recording, and it was cold. It was January, February, and we were recording at the Kink Studio in Crouch End, and I was living in Tottenham. But I remember it being cold and going there, and I was the only representative of the band, and I was at the back of the room while these people were kind of discussing how this song these times should go, and it just felt, oh man, this is all wrong. So in the end it was good because Geffen finally decided not to release the album. We were able to go with a New York indie called Zero Hour, and at least the album was kind of sort of back with us, and we re-recorded the song these times. But the original version is on the outtakes, and a lot of people have been going on about, I hope it's got the original Geffen version.
Is it is it hard to? I mean, what is the that you would like to see reissued that hasn't been reissued?
Well, there isn't anything really. I mean, the thing is, we don't have the rights to the first three albums, so you see these, a Mescal Head reissue on gaudy blue vinyl, and somebody posts it or whatever. It's like, oh, great, but I mean, when that's music, what's the label called? Music on Vinyl, who are out of Haarlem in the Netherlands. So they've been doing those, but I did see. I mean, they were nice. They sent us copies when they initially did it, but there was a Raise reissue, and like you look at the Swervedriver logo at the top, and it's all pixelated, So it's kind of like, they could have maybe put a bit more effort into it.
Do you know what my the band I was in, our second record went up on Spotify recently,
Mm.
and I've no idea who did it. I've no idea who owns that record.
All right, yeah.
I know the label we were on doesn't exist anymore, so I just presume that they sold their catalogue. But it is irritating, and my band on the level that Swervedriver are, so that would
Well,
fuck me
well, I
off.
mean, the other thing about this album is that for the last 10 years, it's been this kind of well, it's not even a label really. This guy in Boston who's had it up on all the platforms and didn't pay us a cent in 10 years. So, and we were keeping an eye on it, and we are just like, at some point we'll get around to reissuing it because he's never even seen those reels of tape that are downstairs. Somebody supposedly owns it because they paid money for it, but possession isn't really 9/10 of the law in this case. But in the end, we went to him and just said, "Hey, Adam," because that's his name, and said, "What details do you have on file for paying Swervedriver? Because we don't think we've seen anything in a while." So then he came back kind of saying, "Oh, guys, I'd love to work on a reissue, but it's like, why are we going to work with somebody who didn't pay us?"
Yeah.
So we went to the CD Baby, his distributor, and just put a dispute in, and he had a month to do something, and he knew he didn't have a leg to stand on, so he sent us a pissy email. In the meantime, we've gone ahead and got this reissue, sort of going, after 10 years of not getting a cent for it. But I don't know how many copies it would have sold in that time on iTunes or whatever.
Adam, if you're listening to this, I'm raising my fist to the air like a villain in an old cartoon.
Mm.
Tell me about film noir then. Tell me about the tell me about the Bolts of Melody record. I mean, I've only heard film noir, so
Mm.
but I know that the title Bolts of Melody comes from a previous song that you wrote. So
Yeah.
tell me what that project is all about.
Well,
I don't like talking about projects. By the way, I feel like it's crept into football and now it's
exactly. I was
creeping
going to
into this
say,
podcast.
I think it's worse in football. I think it's more acceptable in music now.
Yeah.
But yeah, Bolts and Melody was the name for the sort of solo band. I put out our solo album in, I guess, 2007 or something. Adam Franklin. It was called Bolts of Melody, and then we did another one called Spent Bullets. But then we would be on tour, and people would be re-entertained by the rest, like sort of like waitresses and entertained by the rest of the guys. And it's like, how come? So what, you guys are all a band. What's the name of the band? And it was like, it's his name. That seemed a bit weird. So we felt that the band needed a name. Bolts and Melody was the logical thing. So the next two albums were Adam Franklin and Bolts and Melody. But this one is just Bolts and Melody because I wanted to be back in the crowd or something. No, I mean, Loxley, who's up in Toronto, he had contacted me at the end of 2019 and said, "Should we do an album? Because we hadn't done one for a long time." And he said, "Have you got anything, you know, knocking about?" And I said, "Possibly." And that's kind of how it started. And
Why did you want to back into the crowd? I imagine it would be, your name obviously carries weight. Like, why did you want to be not anonymous, but you know what I mean?
well, I mean, I think part of the thing, I think it was an artistic decision on Lee's behalf because a lot of the music that we were kind of really inspired by was kind of, soundtracky kind of music. I mean, that's a very loose term, but that's stuff that quite often instrumental, really. And he just thought, I think we should do an instrumental album. And I said, I agree. And I said, let's call it just Bolts of Melody. And then in the end, I think I sing three lines maybe on the album, but
Right.
there's three or four lines, and there are other vocals. In fact, there are other voices because we wanted, more voices in there. So there's a football crowd and stuff, and then
What football
we,
crowd is it?
yeah, good question actually, because it was recorded when I was recording some guitar or something, and it was left on. It was probably a Liverpool game or something like that.
Do you like football?
Yes, yeah, I do.
Who's your team?
Yeah, Liverpool.
So I did an episode the other day with Andrew Harrison, who used to edit Select magazine. He's
Oh
a
yeah.
Liverpool fan.
Are you Manchester United or something?
No, God, no.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean that.
I'm a Doncaster Rovers fan.
Ah,
Proper football. But
yeah.
he was moaning about. He was using like a football analogy, and he was like, "Oh, sometimes you win a game." I can't remember exactly the wisdom he put into football analogies, but I was a little bit like, "Look, you're a Liverpool fan. Things are either great or they're not so great. I'm a
Mm,
Doncaster Rovers fan. Things are never great."
yeah.
I feel like the last couple of episodes of this podcast, I've managed to get Doncaster Rovers into the conversation. So that's
Good for you. Absolutely. Well,
yeah.
I mean,
More when I asked who your team was, it was so that I could say what my team was.
yeah. I have to say that the reason I'm a Liverpool fan, let's put this on the record once and for all. My father and my grandfather are both Fulham fans because they're both men born in Fulham.
Right.
And the first game I ever saw was the 1975 FA Cup final between Fulham and West Ham. And we were living in Billericay, Essex at the time, where everybody is a Hammers fan. So at school, it was kind of, oh, we're going to beat them. But I'd never seen a game anyway, so I didn't really know. But no, Fulham's going to win. Anyway, Fulham lost. And then that summer, we moved to a village in Oxfordshire. By this point, I was getting into football. So I was watching Match of the Day with my dad, and it was West Ham. And they're playing a team who looked like Fulham, except they lose 4-0 or 4-1. And I'm thinking, this is great. I said to my dad, who's the team that looks like Fulham, Dad? He said, that's Liverpool, son. And so
That
for
was
me,
it.
it's kind of revenge for the 1975 FA Cup final. That's
Oh, I
the
love
reason.
that.
And in the end, you can't, once you get, because I have an affiliation for Fulham. I mean, it's kind of like my second favorite team. But back then, the idea of those two teams existing, it seemed like they existed in different worlds,
Yeah,
because Fulham
yeah,
was second division and then dropped down to the third.
yeah. I live in Leighton, so sometimes I go watch Orient. And when
Yeah.
I first started going to watch Orient, they were minnows compared to Doncaster, who were lording it up in the Championship, and now
Right.
things are very different, and
Yeah.
it all feels a bit
Well, the
weird.
idea that Fulham almost won at Anfield on Sunday, whatever it was, it's just like that was unthinkable back in like 1975.
Have you ever been to see Billericay play?
Well, Billericay was my third team, you see. So they won the FA Vase like in the late 70s. They were winning the FA Vase, kind of like Liverpool were winning the league. And there is one player that I know of. There's only one player who's played for Liverpool, Fulham, and Billericay Town.
I Paul Konchesky.
That's it. Yeah, the man whose
Oh,
whose
really?
mum came. Good knowledge there. Yeah.
Thanks. Cheers. Cheers. I feel like we could talk for ages, and the only reason I need to wrap up is because I've got another interview in 15 minutes, and I really need to go have a wee.
Yes. Fair enough.
Um,
I've got to
but
go and make egg and chips actually. But
oh god, that's a proper December
I
tea,
know
isn't it?
sometimes it's just what you need. It feels kind
So
of decadent. Anyway.
so what is the day that 19th of January?
Mm,
19th of January, everything is about you. Bolts of Melody,
yeah.
reissue of Swervedriver's 99th Dream,
Yeah.
put it in the diary.
Yeah.
Well, not you or me, because I've got the press release and it's your release, but anyone who's interested, which should be a lot of people because you make fantastic music.
Well, thank you, sir.
January 19th in the
Yeah.
diary.
Absolutely. Put it in there. Or if people pre-order it, I think they might get it for Christmas.
Oh, that's good. I'll put that in the show notes, as we
Yeah.
podcasters say. Thanks so much for your time, man. I should ask before we go, when is God, how many years it's been? 4 years since the last Swervedriver record. Where you at with a new Swervedriver record?
Well, we did a recording session. And when was that? That was October of 2022. It was actually at Mark Gardner's studio, but it was more of a kind of get together because at that point a lot of us hadn't really seen each other. So, but we got together and we worked on something. But then we were trying to figure out the best way to present it. And it was kind of like, it could be an EP or a 6-track mini album. But then we figured you do a 6-track mini album, it's still going to be on 12 inches of vinyl, and you're still going to have to charge 20 quid for it.
Yeah,
So, but no, we're thinking of ways. Thinking of that's a Boo Radler song actually. But yes, we're thinking of ways to put something. But yeah, there's some fantastic stuff in the works, I have to say. But then I would say that.
yeah, yeah. You're not going to go. Oh, we've done some new
Actually, I
stuff.
probably
It's
would say that. Yeah.
shit. I think you would actually. I think you are a man of integrity.
I think I once said to Steve Sutherland in a Melody Maker interview that with our third EP, Sandblasted, that we were treading on water. But I don't think I knew what that meant. I didn't really mean treading. It was more like kind of walking on water, just sort of suspended above the water in a kind of psychedelic way. But the way it was expressed was probably, downcast.
I feel like Steve Sutherland has been getting a lot of mentions on my podcast recently.
Has he?
Anyway, thank you so much for your time, man. I hope I pass across again, and thanks for writing so many songs that mean a lot to me.
Oh, thanks, James. That's really great. Thanks for doing this brilliant interview.